Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you never stopped to question how they saw you? For years, I thought I knew him, my best friend, my confidant, the person I could always count on. But one night changed everything. It wasn't anything big at first, just a lingering glance, a subtle touch that sent shivers down my spine, and a silence that felt heavier than words. I remember standing there, frozen, trying to make sense of what was happening. Was I imagining it, reading too much into something innocent, or had I been blind all this time? That night, I learned that even the people you think you know best can surprise you in ways you never saw coming. And once you cross that line, there's no going back. It all started on one of those quiet summer evenings when everything seemed too ordinary to be memorable. The sun was setting behind the rows of maple trees outside my apartment, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. The air carried that unmistakable scent of freshly cut grass and barbecues from neighboring yards. Inside, my small but cozy living room buzzed with the sound of laughter and clinking glasses. Liam was sprawled out on my couch, as he always was on Friday nights. His dark hair was slightly damp from a post-gym shower, and his t-shirt clung to him in a way that made it impossible not to notice his lean, athletic frame. But I didn't think much of it. Liam had been my best friend for over 6 years, ever since we met in college. Back then, he was the confident extrovert who pulled me out of my shell, and I was the introverted guy who helped him pass calculus. We were an odd pair, but it worked. "Pizza or Thai?" he asked, holding his phone up with a grin that could disarm anyone. "Pizza," I replied without hesitation. "Extra cheese." He smirked, predictable as ever. That was Liam. Easygoing, playful, and infuriatingly charming. We had our routines, and I liked it that way. Life was stable, comfortable. Sure, I'd had fleeting crushes and awkward first dates over the years, but nothing that stuck. And honestly, I was okay with that. Love seemed like a gamble I wasn't ready to take. But that night, something felt off. Liam kept glancing at me in a way that made my stomach flip. Not that it was unusual for him to be touchy or teasing. He was naturally affectionate, but tonight his energy felt different. More focused. Like he was watching me too closely, waiting for something. We settled into the couch with the pizza he ordered, flipping through Netflix in search of a movie we'd probably talk over. The dim light from the screen cast shadows on Liam's sharp jawline as he leaned closer, handing me a plate. "You've got sauce on your face," he said, brushing his thumb across the corner of my mouth without hesitation. It was such a casual, Liam thing to do, yet I felt my heart stutter as his touch lingered a fraction longer than it should have. I laughed awkwardly, trying to shake off the strange jolt of warmth that rushed through me. "Thanks, Mom." He didn't laugh like I expected. Instead, he just smiled a soft, almost unreadable expression and leaned back into the couch. For the first time, I wondered what he was thinking. And that's when it hit me. Maybe I didn't know Liam as well as I thought I did. The night unfolded like any other, or at least that's what I kept telling myself. Liam and I had done this 100 times before. Movie nights filled with playful banter and shared silence. But something was different, and the air between us felt charged in a way I couldn't ignore. As we settled on an action movie, I found myself hyper-aware of everything about him. The way his knee brushed against mine, the deep timbre of his laugh, the warmth radiating from his side of the couch. It wasn't the first time I'd noticed these things, but tonight they seemed impossible to brush aside. "Pass me the blanket," Liam said, nudging my arm. I grabbed the throw blanket draped over the back of the couch and handed it to him, but instead of taking it, he spread it over both of us. His arm stayed loosely draped across the back of the couch, his hand resting a little too close to my shoulder. "Comfy?" he asked, his voice low and teasing. "Sure," I said, trying to sound casual. But my heart was pounding, and I hated how easily he could make me feel so unsteady. For a while, I focused on the movie, forcing myself to pretend everything was normal. But then Liam shifted closer, his arm brushing against mine. It wasn't unusual for us to sit close. He'd always been tactile. But this time, I couldn't ignore the heat of his skin or the way my body seemed to gravitate toward his. I stole a glance at him out of the corner of my eye. His gaze wasn't on the screen. He was looking at me. "What?" I asked, my voice coming out sharper than I intended. He shrugged, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Nothing. Just thinking." "About what?" "You." That single word sent a shiver down my spine. He didn't elaborate, and I didn't press him, but the tension between us felt palpable. I turned my attention back to the movie, trying to ignore the way his presence seemed to fill the entire room. As the movie played on, I couldn't stop replaying his words in my head. What did he mean? Thinking about me? Was he teasing me? Or was there something else beneath the surface? The questions gnawed at me, and with every passing second, the boundary of our friendship felt blurrier. "Hey," Liam said, breaking the silence. His voice was softer now, almost hesitant. "Yeah, do you ever think about us?" My breath caught in my throat. I turned to look at him, searching his face for any hint of sarcasm, but he looked completely serious. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I mean," he said, leaning in slightly, "have you ever thought about what it would be like if we weren't just friends?" My heart was racing now, pounding so loudly I was sure he could hear it. I wanted to laugh it off, to deflect with a joke like I always did, but the vulnerability in his expression stopped me. I don't know," I stammered, suddenly feeling exposed. Liam didn't push me. Instead, he just nodded, a small, almost sad smile crossing his lips. "It's okay. Forget I said anything." But I couldn't forget. His words lingered in the air, heavy and unshakable. For the rest of the movie, we sat in a tense, awkward silence. I couldn't focus on the plot or the explosions on the screen. All I could think about was Liam's question and the way it made me feel. When the credits finally rolled, Liam stood up and stretched. "I should probably head out," he said, avoiding my gaze. "You don't have to," I blurted out, surprising even myself. He paused, his eyes meeting mine. "You sure?" I nodded, though I wasn't sure of anything anymore. Liam hesitated for a moment before sitting back down. This time, he was closer, his knee pressing against mine. The silence between us was deafening, and I could feel the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Liam, what did you mean earlier?" He looked at me, his expression unreadable. "I meant exactly what I said. I've been thinking about us. About you." "Why now?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Because I can't keep pretending I don't feel something for you," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "And I think you feel it too." His words hit me like a freight train. I didn't know what to say, how to respond. Part of me wanted to deny it, to push him away and protect the friendship we'd built. But another part of me, the part I'd tried so hard to ignore, wanted to lean into the possibility of something more. "I don't know, Liam," I said finally. "This is a lot." "I know," he said, his voice soft. "And I don't want to mess things up between us. But I had to say something. I had to know if you've ever thought about it." I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time, I saw him in a different light. He wasn't just my best friend anymore. He was someone who saw me, who knew me better than anyone else, and who was willing to take a risk for something he believed in. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. Liam's hand brushed against mine, and this time, I didn't pull away. Instead, I let my fingers linger against his, testing the waters. He smiled a hopeful, tentative smile that made my chest ache. "Is this okay?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't answer with words. Instead, I leaned in, closing the gap between us. The moment our lips met, it felt like the world shifted on its axis. It wasn't just a kiss. It was the unraveling of years of friendship, of buried feelings and unspoken truths. It was messy and imperfect, but it was real. When we finally pulled away, Liam rested his forehead against mine. "So, what now?" I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that everything had changed, and there was no going back. The kiss lingered in the air long after it ended, an electric pulse that seemed to echo between us. Liam's face was inches from mine, his expression a mixture of relief and something deeper, something that made my chest tighten and my pulse quicken. "What does this mean?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "It means I want more," Liam said, his tone steady but laced with vulnerability. "More than just Friday nights and pizza. More than pretending we're just friends." His words hit me like a wave, washing over the walls I had carefully built over the years. I should have felt ecstatic. This was Liam, my best friend, someone I trusted more than anyone. But instead, I was consumed by a storm of conflicting emotions. Was this real? Could we risk everything we had for something we didn't fully understand? What if it didn't work out? "Liam, my voice faltered, the weight of my thoughts suffocating me. "You don't have to say anything," he said quickly, his hand gently brushing against mine. "I just need to know if there's even a chance. If you feel anything close to what I feel." I looked into his eyes, searching for answers I didn't have. His gaze was steady, his vulnerability laid bare in a way I'd never seen before. And that terrified me. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice cracking under the weight of my uncertainty. I think I do, but this is so much, Liam. What if we ruin everything?" "Or," he countered softly, "what if we don't?" His words hung in the air, daring me to imagine a reality where this could work, where we could be something more. Before I could respond, Liam's phone buzzed on the coffee table, shattering the fragile moment. He glanced at the screen, his jaw tightening. "Is everything okay?" I asked, grateful for the distraction, but uneasy about his sudden shift in demeanor. "It's nothing," he said, though his expression betrayed him. "Just my sister." "Are you sure?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "She's been worried about me." I told her I'd been dealing with something, but I didn't tell her what. The unspoken words between us were deafening. He had been wrestling with these feelings alone, and I hadn't even noticed. The guilt hit me like a punch to the gut. "Liam, I'm sorry," I said, my voice trembling. "I didn't realize—" "It's not your fault," he interrupted gently. "I didn't want to burden you with it. But I can't keep pretending. Not anymore." His vulnerability cracked something open inside me. This wasn't just about me. This was about us, about what we could be if I found the courage to take the leap. But fear clawed at my chest, pulling me back. "What if we're wrong?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "What if we try and it falls apart?" "Then at least we'll know," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion swirling in his eyes. "But I'd rather risk everything than spend the rest of my life wondering what could have been." The intensity of his words hit me like a tidal wave. My heart ached with equal parts fear and longing, and I didn't know which would win out. "I need time," I said finally, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. Liam nodded, though I could see the flicker of disappointment in his eyes. "I get it," he said softly. I hope you'll think about it." "I will," I promised, though the knot in my stomach told me that thinking wouldn't make this any easier. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Liam stood, grabbing his jacket from the back of the chair. "I should go," he said, his voice quiet. You don't have to, I said quickly, the words spilling out before I could stop them. He paused, looking at me with a mixture of hope and hesitation. Do you want me to stay? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I let the silence stretch, my mind racing. Did I want him to stay? Yes. But was I ready to face what that meant? I didn't know. Liam's hand lingered on the doorknob, his eyes searching mine for something I couldn't give him, at least not yet. I'll see you tomorrow, he said finally, his voice tinged with a quiet sadness that broke my heart. And then he was gone, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the crushing weight of everything unsaid. As the door clicked shut behind him, I sank onto the couch, my mind spinning. The room felt colder without him, emptier. I wanted to chase after him, to tell him I felt it too, that I wanted to try. But the fear held me back, its grip tightening with every passing second. What if I waited too long? What if, by the time I found my courage, it was already too late? The thought sent a shiver down my spine, leaving me with a single unshakable question. Was I willing to lose Liam to keep my fears intact? The apartment was quiet after Liam left, but my mind was anything but. I sat on the couch, replaying everything that had happened. The kiss, his confession, and the look in his eyes as he walked out the door. I'd asked for time, but time felt like a cruel thief, stealing the moments I could have spent with him. The weight of my hesitation pressed down on me, and I couldn't shake the image of his hopeful smile, fading into disappointment. That night, I barely slept. My mind was a storm of questions and what-ifs. What if I had kissed him again, told him I felt the same? What if I had let myself fall instead of holding back? And most importantly, what if I lost him because I was too afraid to take the leap? By morning, the fear of losing him outweighed everything else. I grabbed my phone, my fingers trembling as I typed out a message. Can we talk? The minutes stretched into eternity as I waited for his reply. When my phone buzzed, I nearly dropped it in my haste to read his response. Liam, I'll be over in 10. I didn't have time to overthink. I paced the living room, my thoughts racing as I rehearsed what I wanted to say. But when Liam knocked on the door, every carefully planned word evaporated. He stood there, looking unsure for the first time in all the years I'd known him. Hey, he said softly. Hey, I replied, stepping aside to let him in. The air between us was heavy with unspoken words. He leaned against the arm of the couch, crossing his arms as he waited for me to start. I've been thinking, I began, my voice shaky, about what you said last night. He nodded, his expression unreadable. I'm scared, Liam, I admitted. I'm scared of ruining what we have, of losing you if this doesn't work. But the truth is, I'm more scared of not trying, of letting you walk away and wondering what could have been. His gaze softened, and I could see the hope flicker back into his eyes. I don't know what this looks like, I continued, but I know I feel something for you, and I want to figure it out. With you. For a moment, he didn't say anything, and I held my breath, terrified I'd said too little, too late. But then he smiled, a slow, genuine smile that lit up his entire face. You have no idea how long I've been waiting to hear that, he said, his voice thick with emotion. He stepped closer, his hand brushing against mine before lacing our fingers together. The warmth of his touch felt like coming home. I don't need all the answers right now, he said. I just need to know you're in this with me. I am, I said, the words feeling like a promise. And just like that, the fear that had held me back began to dissolve. We spent the rest of the day talking, laughing, and rediscovering each other in this new light. It wasn't perfect. We stumbled over words and second-guessed ourselves, but it was real. As the sun set, bathing the room in a warm glow, I realized something important. Life wasn't about avoiding risks or protecting yourself from pain. It was about connection, about letting yourself be seen and loved for who you truly are. Liam was right. I would rather risk everything than spend my life wondering what could have been. And as I looked at him, his smile as bright and familiar as ever, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next, we would face it together. Sometimes, the greatest love stories aren't about finding someone new. They're about seeing someone you've known all along in a way you never expected. And in that moment, I knew this was the beginning of ours.